My name's Alex. Thanks for sticking around and listen to a Dumbo speak. Thanks for Pat for inviting me. Yeah, I created this lovely little thing called Slite. So I thought I'd do a quick little setup and get it going so you know what I'm talking about before we get into anything further. But it is a LED panel, basically for sort of like for creators, videographers, photographers, makeup artists, tattoo artists, absolutely anyone. A whole bunch of magnets in the back. It was sort of like bespoke designed, a whole bunch of LEDs in the front. So magnetic plate into there, and then we can just chuck it onto a stand, like so. I feel like I'm doing an infomercial here. There we go. Hopefully that's strong enough there. And then all powered by USB-C. So you can just use like a power bank or any sort of like laptop charger or anything like that. And then yeah, you're good to go. We want to sort of have a magnetic ecosystem, so you can sort of have a diffuser that just pops on the front as well. Easy to sort of move around. And there we go. That's sort of the whole gist of what I wanted to do. So let me give you the whole story of how we got here by sharing the early Alex lore. Never really cared about school that much. I really like music, and I feel like I was introduced to Tupac when I was like 5 or 6, and I heard him swearing in songs, and my mind was like, I didn't know you could swear in music. And I feel like that was the first inception of like, you can do things differently, and that's cool, or that can be cool. So yeah, always sort of took photos. My dad was a photographer / teacher as well, so I'd always had a camera in my hand. And I really like sort of breaking things and seeing how things worked and taking out batteries and sort of trying to make sure things could work without cases and things like that. And then that's me, my little getting rad in Toltrunga in Norway, but always loved to sort of travel and everything like that. I feel like the easiest way to describe who I am is through my journey through gaming. So started with I was talking to my old man, and he said our first computer was an Apple IIe. So I thought that would be appropriate for an Apple speech. But then I remember the Apple II GS, I feel like, which I think is the one that I've got there. Playing a whole bunch of the Sierra games. I sort of felt like I'd wait to gauge the audience age to sort of see how deep I can jump into this. But yeah, that was sort of like the Mortal Kombat, and there was a game called Police Quest 4 where they incorporated a whole bunch of photos into graphics. And that was just another thing where I was like, oh wow, like you can actually do that and it's cool. I felt like that kind of got me excited about what you could actually achieve in something that's, normally just sort of like blocky graphics. And then, yeah, turned into Sega Master System, Alex the Kid in Shinobi World, Prince of Persia, all that sort of stuff. Then going on to Theme Hospital, Roller Coaster Tycoon, in the sort of the early Pentium phases, going away from Apple, sorry. Twinton's Odyssey, all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting, like when I was sort of putting this together, looking back on the things that I enjoy about business, so much of it goes back to the games that I enjoyed and like the things that I learnt through various games, which I thought was quite introspectively interesting. Then we got into the internet era with the old 56K modem. My old man, again, was sort of like massively into technology, so we were one of the first people to have cable internet, which meant Napster was really good. So I was sort of like the go-to guy for all things music at our high school that Pat and I both attended. And yeah, I remember there was a LAN back then when you had to hook up your computers with cables. That was at Colonial Stadium, or Telstra Dome back then, where it was like 1,000 people all came and hooked their computers in. It was quite interesting. But yeah, very, very into the whole Counter-Strike and Warcraft scene. That definitely ate up a couple hours of my life. Then post-high school, sort of played in a couple of bands, did a whole bunch of music to it and all that kind of stuff. And there was just a demand for rehearsal space and sort of creative space in Melbourne. There was just like every place smelled like a pub and, like sort of sticky carpet, beer and toilets and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make a space that was sort of clear, nice and easy, straightforward and sort of simple. So I started Aesthetic Studios, which was, again, around the corner from where Pat and I went to high school, which was cool. And that was awesome. It was just basically 4 rooms, a creative space for bands, for photography, gallery space, TV shows. We worked with The Voice, like The Bachelor, a whole bunch of like cycling shows for SBS, short films. Yeah, it's really cool. That sort of like exposed me to a lot of different creative sort of spaces. And then again, being a photographer, doing video work and everything like that, that just sort of put me in the right scenario to sort of be exposed to a lot of people that needed photographers and needed videographers. And that sort of, that took me around the world, down to sort of Patagonia, up to Iceland, New York. And one thing that I never liked about traveling, or sort of like, I just didn't like setting up gear. Like I sort of wanted to be as minimal and sort of like lightweight as sort of possible. And I think that sort of came into me not liking to pay for things as well. So I look at, so like this top corner here, where I'm doing some terrible gang signs, that's just a slider. So that's just basically there to sort of have your camera just go from left to right to sort of, create a real simple sliding image. And those things were sort of like around $1,000 for sort of like an entry-level one. And my DIY brain was just sort of like, I reckon I can make that pretty easy. So the place next door was, they made doors and curtains. So I sort of said, what can you do? What do you got there? And he had a whole bunch of like curtain bearings. So the wheels are the upside down things that curtains go to left and right on. And then the curtain rods and a bit of wood. And there you go. I've got a slider for probably 2 hours and like $10 worth of gear. And it was cool. It did the job. And then that turned into me designing a guitar, just because the guitar that I was using, it was really heavy. And then being on stage and sort of being quite active on stage, I'd sort of like throw it around a fair bit, so I just needed something lighter. So I built a guitar with my old man. And that was fun. That was sort of, like my first dive into electronics and sort of understanding going from like a concept all the way through to an actual product that I was making things with and actually taking around the country and sort of playing in front of thousands of people and stuff like that with, which was cool. It was really, really fun. And also at the studio, I'm not sure if I've got that in there now, but I also started making, I spent a couple months in China creating just leads, guitar leads, guitar picks, microphone leads, anything like that, anything that people just sort of break often. I just wanted to have something that was just of a really good quality that people could buy at a really good price and then just buy once and then hopefully not have to buy for a long time. And I think that was probably my first dive into the manufacturing sort of world as well, which was fun. And then, so you have to excuse the jumping around. I've brought the wrong laptop. I've left mine at home and brought my girlfriend's, which is very fun. But yeah, we moved up to Beechworth, which is where I'm living now, just sort of 2.5 hours north in basically the border of Victoria and New South Wales. And another family just bought this 160-year-old brewery, which, are you guys familiar with Bilsons? Have you seen Bilsons anywhere? No? They just do a bunch of like cordials and sort of ready premix vodkas and things like that. But it's a 160-year-old building, and I was documenting the process of just sort of, modernizing it, getting this new family in there, updating everything, and making it a lot more work safe than the standards in 1860. And yeah, that's where the idea was born for Slite. I was shooting in the, what is now the whiskey cellar, had no electricity, and I was just sort of like, why can't my lighting be powered by the thing that powers my laptop? And it was just sort of like, I know USB-C can put out at least 80 watts. A lot of the lights that I was using around 50 or 60 watts, so why isn't that a thing yet? And so I tried to do some research, and it was the kind of thing where it's just like, surely there's a reason why no one's used that technology together, but couldn't find a reason. Asked a couple of sort of like engineers and things like that said, no, it's not possible, just off the top of their heads and all that sort of stuff, but I kind of felt like, I feel like it should be possible. Like it didn't really sound like there was anything that made me go, nah, that's a deal breaker. So ended up with these very crude prototypes down here. This one a lot more crude than that one. But it was proof of concept. Like we did it. We sort of wired it together. I hate soldering, but we soldered it together. We worked out a language where USB-C can be basically converted into power that the LED strips can actually understand and work efficiently. And then we're sort of like, cool, this is something that I can actually use. And then I basically was having lunch with a friend, and I was just really psyched that I'd made this thing that I was proud of. And he's like, well, if it's useful for you, maybe it's useful for other people. Have you thought about turning it into an actual sort of business? And then we thought, sure, why not? Let's sort of give it a go. And then started building a team around that. And it was really interesting. Like, I think that sort of goes back to my enjoyment of the theme park and theme hospital games and Roller Coaster Tycoon, I really, really enjoyed building the team. And I felt like it was really important, as hippie as it sort of sounds like, just getting the right vibe from the right people. And I think that was sort of another thing that I learned from aesthetic studios, is that like you can't fake that authenticity or honesty. And it's sort of like the people that just love designing, the people that love designing, like icons and everything like that, like you can't sort of deny that. And that's all I sort of wanted to do when we were building a team. Like we're sort of, the industrial designers, and that was sort of the first cab off the rank. And it was really interesting. Like you'd sort of walk into one office and there'd just be their wall of fame that they're sort of like impressing you with as you walk in, expecting you to sort of be wowed and impressed by medical devices and all these sort of stuff, which were very impressive. But yeah, it was just sort of, I wanted to find someone that was just passionate about design and understood what we wanted to do. And we found that with Neela at Vert up in Sydney. And yeah, that sort of first meeting was really, really cool. It was the kind of thing where there's also Andrew, who's the CEO, was just having a chat for the first time, and he got out a napkin and instantly just started sketching away. And it was just like, cool, he gets it. Like the ideas are already flowing, all about that kind of energy. So yeah, ended up working with them, who sort of have a manufacturing, not partner, but sort of person that I'm already working with. And he's just another massive nerd like myself and loves technology, loves cutting edge kind of stuff. So we got along like a house on fire, and yeah, started sort of prototyping and sort of really seeing what this could actually sort of turn into. And it was super exciting. Like I still remember getting the first brief that we've got, like official, hey, this is what Slite can actually look like. And I think we've got, yeah, some of the concepts from here, but I was just like so impressed by what this idea from, going back a couple of slides to that, like whatever that little board is, to, something as clean and sleek as that. Even just as a first round, it was just so impressive. And I just sort of get that nerd chill sort of just thinking about how cool that was. And then even, like new ideas of just sort of sharing it with different people from different perspectives, like what they see from it. And, like even the ability to stack, like that, I never really cared about the ability to stack until she showed me that photo. And I was like, oh, cool. If we can make them stack, why not? Yeah, and that was really cool. Like that was sort of the journey there, getting it designed, going back and forth with a whole bunch of prototypes, being super meticulous with absolutely every aspect of it. The name Slite, it sort of implies, thin, slight in size and all that kind of stuff. So we were very sort of particular on being the thinnest, most powerful light that you can take with you anywhere. Slide in your backpack alongside your laptop, jump on a plane and, be set up in as quickly as you saw at the start there. So yeah, it was cool. It was really, really fun. An awesome process there. And then also sort of working with, like we obviously wanted to have the app designed alongside with it, just to be as simple and straightforward as it can be. So people can, like change the, actually that's kind of boring. But you can change the colors, you can change the brightness, all that kind of stuff via the app. There's a thing called a color picker where I can sort of take a photo of your blue shirt and it'll represent the color there. So if you're working with brands like Starbucks, you can get the Starbucks green just by taking a photo of it and all that kind of thing. Anything that can make your workload smaller and quicker, that's, that was our sort of priority with Slite. Yeah, so this was literally the last time I was on stage, was accepting the Good Design of the Year Best in Class for Consumer Electronics Award, which was really, really cool, jumping up in front of 400 people that had designed like cancer fighting treatment. And I was kind of like, oh, got a light, makes you nice. That was awesome. It was really, really fun. And we decided to do a Kickstarter campaign, which was its own beast within itself. And we ended up raising $100,000 on the first day, and then finished on just over $300,000. And then raised another $75,000 over the next like 6 months in sort of like the post-campaign things. And that was awesome. It was very humbling. Like it was kind of like watching your first kid go off to school for the first time. I was like, I hope people care. Like, I hope people like it. And people seem to like it, so it was really cool. Where are we at? Basically, we wanted to do the Kickstarter to fund manufacturing, just because everything is expensive. And we're also doing it at quite a fun time. So this is just post-COVID, and there was the chip shortage, there was the silicon shortage, there was wars, there was COVID, there was constantly opening and closing and everything like that. It was amazing just sort of learning about the logistics of getting everything into the same spot, and how many things could go wrong will go wrong. And like a big thing on Kickstarter, is everyone sort of familiar with Kickstarter, crowdfunding? Like they're sort of, the biggest fear is that people aren't going to get what they pay for, or you're not going to deliver. It's a scam. So anytime we had a delay, we're like, oh, cool. Like everyone, scam. So we really have to sort of, get really good at putting out fires and sort of saying, hey, this is, it's a real thing. I'm not doing a runner with your 300 grand. We appreciate it, but you're in COVID lockdown, we're in COVID lockdown, chill. And that was good. So we ended up delivering 6 months late, which is never fun, but again, huge learning curve for someone that's never manufactured at this sort of level, having this many moving parts, and working with magnets. These are the worst things in the world to work with. So the top left corner are sort of like the magnets that are in the back here. So so there's 7 little discs in there, and trying to put them in at the same time when we're sort of like prototyping to sort of make sure that it's the right strength and everything like that, that would just click together and then be impossible to get removed. And that'd spark and like cause fires, and it was terrible. But like we wanted to be able to make sure that that was in there and then sort of not going to go anywhere, not going to do anything. So it's like a very, very big critical part of the whole process, but yeah, it was never fun. Quite annoying, but one of the main manufacturing issues that we went into was just in the thinness. Like we wanted to stick to being 14 millimeters thin. We wanted to be the thinnest light that, like literally as thick as your laptop. And that was sort of very important to the messaging and, why I wanted this light to exist in the first place. But then there was a whole bunch of issues in sort of like the heat that the manufacturing, like the plastic sort of goes into. So then, and then talking about extrusion and all that sort of fun stuff in Blender. Like that sort of probably pushed us back 2 or 3 months just in sort of figuring out how to make sure the plastic looks premium, but then also is, like rigid enough, but then also thin. So that was a good little battle there, but we got through it. And again, like we're learning with the manufacturer who's never had to manufacture plastic so thin to be rigid, but then still premium. And it was great. It was, like everyone was sort of growing together. It was beautiful. Where are we up to now? So these are going to be very boring slides now. But so we shipped and we were, 6 months late. Everyone was super happy though, except for one person that thought there was an internal battery and called us liars and all that sort of stuff, even though we're very clear with our language that there is no internal battery. But that is people on the internet. The feedback that you get from Kickstarter is awesome. We sort of, sent out a bunch of surveys just saying, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Why did you buy it? What are you going to use it for? And that was a massive learning phase for us, just because it was super interesting seeing that, makeup artists were probably our second biggest audience, behind sort of like photographers / videographer, content creator, makeup artists, then tattoo artists. And then there was a guy from Ocean Grove that takes photos with like a 160-year-old camera, and he only uses like the blue light. So on the slides, there's a whole bunch, there's like 16 million colors as well. So you can kind of, go through all that sort of stuff. There you go, 16 million, fantastic. So he shoots exclusively in blue light because that's what the sheets of metal that he prints onto on this like massive old sort of like box camera, the blue light responds to. So it was just cool. There's just sort of like so many different uses for, this idea for a light that I just wanted, that was just born out of, I just didn't want to set up. Like I just wanted to be quicker. Like I hated, like there was times when I wouldn't want to do a whole bunch of work for, certain clients and things like that, just because I know I have to bring like 120 centimeters softbox, massive C stand that's, going to take another 5 minutes to sort of set up and then calibrate and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted a quick and easy thing to be set up in seconds. And you can set that up in 24 seconds, which is awesome. That's been a blast. Like we officially opened for business last May. So we've just had our first year, which was awesome. Sold out of our first set of stock. Got our second run now that's going into production now. Doing a whole bunch of new products, which is really exciting. Going into sort of like more power banks and even more sort of portable lighting for people to use. Again, leaning into the success we've seen in the makeup world. Like we had Slites at the Met Gala this year, which was awesome. At the Olympics now, we've got Slites. It's cool. It's just cool seeing this idea that I had, just being used across the world. It's really, really cool. Yeah. And I suppose what's next, I suppose why I'm here in the sort of first place was that we want to continue to build out the app, which was sort of like, we had a really good experience with building it out. It was a very sort of, I feel like we've got an intimate knowledge of every single area of Slite, just because I've always had the philosophy of like, do it yourself until you can't do it yourself, and then get in touch with people the experts in the industry. And yeah, we want to sort of really lean into the functionality of the app and the ease of use of just sort of setting up more things at once, having more lights, more products on the sort of, the Slite sphere, and sort of just expand out into a whole bunch of other things that just make creatives' lives a bit easier, quicker, less painful. And that's where we're heading in 2024, 2025. And that's about it. Any questions?
Questions, anyone? Or?
Thank you. How long it was from like the idea you had until today?
Until today? So it was about 2021 I had the idea, and then it was about 18 months until we hit the Kickstarter. And then, Kickstarter until here has been a little over sort of 2 years. So it's been a long road, but we've sort of thrown ourselves in the deep end and learnt a lot. That's cool. That's, again, I feel like when we're working with people that are at the top of their game for everything. So having them sort of, lead and talk from experience has just been super invaluable. Yeah.
Sorry, are you worried about copycats at all? Has it happened?
Definitely. At the end of the day, it's a light. And that, I think, comes down to the languaging and the branding as well. We sort of, it's the whole ecosystem and the experience of it's just an easy, all-in-one, no-brainer, buy this once, you don't have to worry about it ever again. That's the sort of the approach that we're sort of taking. And we've been on like AliExpress and things like that. There's, like the Slite with an extra E on the end and things like that. You'd send them an email saying, hey, I'm Alex from Slite, stop it. And they'll take it down. It's sort of like the way that we're setting ourselves aside is just the quality. The LEDs that are in there are completely bespoke, so no one else can use those. And I suppose the way that light is judged, so these lights here are probably around what's called like a 70 CRI. So 100 CRI is the sun, and then like your sort of fluorescence in your kitchen and things like that around sort of 50 or 60, and ours are 98.9. So we're like almost the sun, which is super accurate. And we've sort of put a lot of time into calibrating the LEDs and how flattering they are. Because people just want to put up a light and it's kind of like a IRL filter, rather than doing it on TikTok or whatever. Seeing how good you look on camera while you're shooting the content sort of creates more confidence in yourself as well. So it's that sort of experience that comes with, we've got a whole bunch of educational content as well, working with a whole bunch of, influencers and things that are just, at the top of their game and just sharing sort of valuable information. And if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for, people that are listening along. So that's sort of what we're really leaning into. Like the community aspect of it is mega important. And also probably the most fun thing about it. Just seeing what people are creating has, been a blast. Yep.
How big is your team? And second to that is how many software developers versus people on the hardware and marketing and sales side of things?
So I suppose we've always had, there's been two of us that sort of myself and two others that started the company and currently in the process of sort of basically becoming all by myself. So for the past sort of year, I've been doing absolutely everything by myself. Yeah, so sort of like buying those sort of shares as we sort of speak, which is nice and fun and nice and stressful. But the team, so I've got a software engineer in Brisbane who is basically responsible for a whole bunch of like the hardware. And then he also sort of worked in conjunction with our manufacturer in Sydney, who's then got a team in sort of Taiwan and China. And then everyone just sort of, does everything. It's sort of like quite a circular thing there. So we've got like the one designer in Sydney, so working with Neela. She's not at Vert anymore, but working with Neela. I'm doing all the marketing ourselves with my partner who's sort of helping out. Doing all the content, like doing all the filming, all the sort of UGC stuff. We work with a lot of different creators, so it's forever a revolving group of people. But at the core, it's just sort of myself and I suppose my girlfriend. But again, like this is sort of we're looking at doing another Kickstarter later in the year, and I think that's when we sort of will really need to push out and sort of grow the team and have sort of like more of a full-time app crew and things like that.
And so that one Brisbane dev is doing firmware, hardware, and the iOS app and Android?
No. So we did have the app was built by...
Who is this? That's incredible.
Yeah, to be honest, he's a wizard, and he's really cool. That was one challenge with the language in which the app talks to the hardware was quite challenging. So there's sort of like, there's 5 channels on the app, on the Slite, which is sort of like the white, and then the RGB LEDs. So that kind of like language needed to be defined. And that was sort of like, everyone sort of worked really well together. There was a team called Taptitude that we built the app with. And it was awesome. Everyone sort of got along. Everyone wanted what's best for Slite, which is cool. And I think that was sort of the part that I enjoyed, was making sure, like the app people want the app to be the best. The engineers want the engineering to be the best. The designers want the design to be, like the sleekest. So I think it was just about managing expectations and just sort of like making sure everyone's doing their best for the collective Slite. But yeah, the team, so I think there was a lead developer for iOS and a lead for Android. And then just like another sort of like coordinator who would sort of, be in all the meetings and everything like that. But yeah, it was a fun, pretty smooth process. But there's a whole bunch of features, like it breaks my heart at the moment that there's special effects on the Slite, and you can change the brightness and the frequency of, say, how fast the colors are strobing or anything like that. But you can't change that on the app yet. So that breaks my heart that like the, 12 megabytes of space on there is doing more computing power than the app. So yeah, that's what we're sort of, looking to sort of expand out there with the terms of functionality within the app and how that sort of works in sort of, creating more creative endeavors and just sort of seeing how people put it to work. Yeah.
I have comment and a question.
Sure.
Comment, you're in the right place to get the app fixed.
Very good. I believe so.
He's coming to coding night.
iOS at least.
Question for the audience. Like an hour ago, who thought lighting was just like a solved thing? I did. I think you're all lying. I assumed lighting was just like a solved thing and there was no space for innovation in that area.
Oh, for sure.
But obviously there is. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's really interesting. It's kind of, it's hard to, like, people don't know how important light is when it comes to photography or videography. But then it's the kind of thing where it's like, as soon as they're in front of a light and they can see the difference that good lighting makes, you're like, I get it. But, like, it's very hard to communicate that problem. And that's definitely a very big sort of marketing challenge. But yeah, once you're in front of a good light, you always want to be in front of a good light. And even, like small business, taking, Zoom calls and things like that. Just people looking their best in front of their computer. Yeah.
I just want last one. Any like sneak peeks on what's to come? Like,
I'd love to, but
can't reveal anything.
Have to get some NDA signed there.
Okay.
We're actually, it's really cool. Like we're working with, it was cutting edge at the time. We're using the same sort of like heat sink that cools the LEDs that like Huawei use in their phones. That was sort of like a super rare alloy that not many people were using at the time. And that was just awesome. Like that was sort of like a really cool, nerdy sort of thing that we couldn't release yet. And like the things that we're doing now are the same sort of thing. And I suppose talking back to, copycats and things, yeah, it's weird. Like I kind of, the first sort of 6 months of creating Slite, trying to gather information without exposing the idea was really difficult. Like I kind of had to learn how to dance around saying exactly what I want without sort of sharing exactly what I'm doing. And I have to do that again now. But it's cool. Yeah, we're very excited. It's another thing where it's just sort of like the USB-C, no one was doing that at the time, and we're just sort of doing something that no one's doing at the time. So yeah, it's gonna be cool. Expanding it out, it's gonna be fun. Sure. What's it cost? So these are, what are they? They're $3.99 Australian. So it's like $2.50 USD or something like that. But the next products we're going to be doing, without revealing any more, are going to be $99 US. As sort of like, this is going to be the workhorse, sort of like, powerful one. And then everything is just going to roll down from there. It's like, if it's good enough for the pros, it'll be good enough for everyone else that's sort of, taking photos for their business or anything like that.
What's that compared to other like devices?
So it's pretty much like right in the middle. it's sort of like it's the cheapest, best light, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of like, you know, you can get panels for like $100 that are a lot less powerful and way worse quality and like cheaper build and everything like that. But then there's other lights that are up to, you know, like $1,200. There's a $3,000 light that's, you know, basically the same sort of size, a little bit bigger, but, you know, twice as powerful. So it's kind of like in there about 3,500. So it's kind of like it's a premium. I just wanted it, you know, again, going back to why I wanted it to exist. It's sort of like, it's a price that I would pay for something I can rely on day in, day out. And I think that, you know, that's been good for the makeup artists and photographers, makeup artists and tattooists that literally use it every day to make their living, sort of thing. So the fact that they're able to use it every single day, not having to worry about color shift in the LEDs or, you know, it not turning on and things like that, it's cool. Like I think it's a good price point. Of course, I want it to be cheaper, but things are expensive.